Mm. It's a pretty good football game on right now. Good evening. Here is the problem that I have with first dates. What are you looking forward to 5 years from now? You see what I'm saying? That's the problem that I have with first dates. That question. What are your future plans? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What kind of a question is that for a first date? This isn't a job interview. 9 times out of 10, the only reason why the person is on that date is because they're in the middle of a dry spell. So the only thing that matters at that time is quenching that dry spell. So where you plan on being in 5 years, 5 days, 5 months, none of that shit motherfucking matters. I'm only concerned with what you're planning on doing for the next 3 to 5 hours. And you're asking me what my 5-year plan is. As if to say you're going to be a part of that. How presumptuous can you be? Could you be? How arrogant can you be to assume that what I'm doing in 5 years is going to be any of your motherfucking business right now? Right now. Why does that matter? That's a stupid ass question for a first date. And women usually ask that question on the first date because they don't want to come across as a hoe. So they try to ask these educated questions to seem deep or introspective in some way. Like that matters on a fucking first date. That doesn't matter on a first date. I could care less what your intentions are. I could really care less what your intentions are. Why is my 5-year plan relevant for a first date? You're only asking that question because you don't want to be looked at as a hoe. Okay? And I understand I understand the unpopular act of fucking on the first date and how you will be labeled by society, those who fuck on first dates. You know, you're labeled a hoe if you fuck on a first date. And let me tell you something about that label. That's a motherfucking lie. Okay? So I want you to dispel that thought from your mind right now. Ball it up, throw it into the sea of forgetfulness, because that is not the truth. Ladies, fucking on the first date does not make you a hoe at all. It doesn't. In fact, what it does is, like Andre 3000 said, it shows me that you know what you want out of life. That's all it does. That's all it does. Fucking on the first date doesn't make you a hoe. You know what makes you a hoe? Asking a motherfucker on the first date what his 5-year plan is. Because what kind of hoe-ass question is that? You understand what I'm saying? That makes you a whore. I was riding down the street the other day, and as I'm riding down the street the other day, I'm riding on my route to work. And this is the route that I take every day. So I wasn't just like randomly riding down the street. I'm sorry I made it seem like that. That wasn't the case. I was going to work. On my way to work, I got to an intersection, a very familiar intersection, the same intersection I see every time I take this route. I take a couple of different routes to work, but on this particular day, I took this particular route. On this route, it's popular. It's a well-known intersection for having panhandlers. Okay, and on this particular day, I noticed there were no panhandlers up, but there was a sign on the corner of this intersection that read, "No soliciting, no panhandling. Violators will be prosecuted," or whatever the case. So I found that to be very interesting. So the next day, I'm going to work and I'm taking the same route. Okay. But this day on my route, there was a homeless gentleman standing up under this sign, right? And the homeless gentleman was holding up a sign that said, I'm hungry, anything helps. It was a homeless white gentleman. Looked like he had been between his 30s and 40s, something like that. Very, 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 very unfortunate situation. So, as I said before, I see this gentleman standing at this intersection, and I immediately pulled out my cell phone and called the police on him. I called the police on him. I was doing my civic duty because we needed help in that case. I needed help in that case. And I needed to help him also. So yes, I called the police on that white man. I'm not exactly sure if they took him to jail or what the case was, because I wasn't able to stand or sit and watch to see what happened. But I did call the police on him. I did offer him help, and hopefully he got that. But the point that I'm making is this: don't give money to homeless white men. Don't give money to homeless white men. We live in a country that was created by white men for white men and women, but specifically white men, okay? We live in a country where our country is being ran by a white president who has proclaimed to grab women by the pussy. Our president has taken photos with Jeffrey Epstein on his island. Jeffrey Epstein, for those of you who may not know, is a well-known pedophile. He's a well-known pedophile. We'll just leave it at that. Jeffrey Epstein was Donald Trump's homeboy. That's our president today. This is our president. These are all white men. So what that tells me, white man, is that if you are homeless, living in the country, considering all of those factors, how the fuck could you possibly be failing?